Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 1002 to 1003 for the 21st to 22nd of November, and this is the floating head report. So anyway, we're gonna start off from the Kherson front, and we're gonna go anti-clockwise direction because so that we can reach the highlight first, which is the Velyka Novosilka sector. And over at the Kherson front, there is still Ukrainian reports over the past 2 days about fighting in the pre-Dnipropetrovsk direction. Shellings reported at Mikhailske and Buhunka, and that's all. There is no Russian SITREP daily SITREP for yesterday because they usually on Friday they do weekly summaries. So over at the Zaporizhia front, there is fighting reported over at Kayamsky. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Russian Defense Ministry reported fighting at Pyatikaki, Novoandrievka and Mala Tomashka also see fighting. I think the more interesting one is the Kayamsky one because Ukrainian Defense Ministry did mention about this, but it's only just one attack during in that report. But we shall see. No, generally this is still pretty skirmishy. I don't think this is some kind of a major offensive like what we are seeing over at the Velyka Novosilka. So at the Velyka Novosilka sector of the Donetsk front, in the frontline changes report, you probably have already seen. Did I do a frontline changes report? No, yes, I did. But the Ukrainian defense, the Ukrainian mapping, Deep State UA actually corroborated most of these Russian claims. Russian claimed a huge amount of ground captured. I did mention this in the frontline changes report. The Ukrainian mapping actually did corroborate most of it. So this is definitely legitimate right now. The Russian push around Velyka Novosilka is real. And the amount of grounds taken is huge. We are talking about like this amount of grounds being taken, and this includes the latest geolocation over here, where the Russian forces are attacking towards the southeast of Velyka Novosilka. Russian forces, according to Russian claims, is just next door, and there is a push towards the south of Rozdone, north of Rozdone. As I mentioned before, there will be a pincer around Rozdone, so this is currently happening. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to zoom in a bit more, so don't worry. And so we're now talking about the general strategic situation. So Russian forces take all the grounds around Zolita Neba, Shetaske, fully securing all these settlements, as well as expansion of control around Novodonetsk, fighting in the east of Uruzhaine. Geolocation of Russian forces in the southeast of Rivnopil, confirming Russian presence around there, as the Russians are pushing towards Novosilka, Zelenopole, and fighting is still reported over at Novodarivka. And this reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry for both days, definitely showing that the Russians are seriously pushing Novodarivka because this is behind time. Rivnopil is more successful, so Novodarivka need to push harder in order to straighten the front line with Rivnopil. So while this is ongoing, so let's zoom in into the situation at Velyka Novosilka first. So the Russian forces are attacking this area here. This is Velyka Novosilka. It have a bridge over to Vremivka, and they have the bridge south, two bridges towards the north and south of Velyka Novosilka. There's another bridge around here leading to the northeast. So just take note that Velyka Novosilka is a bit of a special settlement. It's right in the middle of multiple rivers around here. So, and the Russian forces is attacking directly in the frontal attack towards the east, conquering all the entrenchment along the way. And in the later geolocation, the Russians are flanking southeast. They are attacking from a different direction. So because there is a river around here, so you can see that there is a reasoning why the Russians are attacking in both different directions, because it's literally just different vectors, different sector of the settlement because of the river. So and this is the current situation, and the Ukrainian forces seems to have massively withdrawn into the city. They basically abandoned position because there's no way the front line moves so quickly. We are talking about within 2 days, 7 kilometers has been conquered by the Russian forces. It's a huge. And if you talk about from the nearest point all the way to the furthest point is 9 kilometers. So this kind of frontline change only shows Ukrainian forces basically abandoning position. But it's important to note that abandoning position doesn't mean that the attacker will be able to just drive at 50 kilometers per hour. You can't, because you do not know where's the ambush, you do not know where are mines, booby traps. all this kind of thing. So the progress would be slow. So the people who do redrawing the retreats actually usually can run away. So that's the point. So that's the Velyka Novosilka situation. Very, very interesting. This is the latest geolocation, by the way, 23rd of November. This was just published like within the past few hours, as per this recording. Rozdone, as I mentioned, during the, I think, conclusions, I believe that there will be a pincer around it, and this indeed seems to be the case. So according to the Russian claims, the Russian forces have attacked into the northeast of Rozdone, and but in the latest Ukrainian report, the Russian forces have captured one of these entrenchments in the south of Rozdone, and conquering some of the grounds around here, west of Shatarsky. And with geolocation of Russian forces in the southeast of Rozdone, we are looking at this entrenchment going to get captured, and the Russians going to flank to the rear position of Rozdone. So which means the Ukrainian forces defending at Rozdone may be encircled at this rate if these defenses around on this southwest of Rozdone do not hold. So that is the thing. This defensive, if they hold, that is perfectly fine. But if they cannot hold, then we are talking about the fall of Velyka Novosilka entirely. Velyka Novosilka will be in danger, as I mentioned multiple times before. There is only one more crossing around here, around Novi Koma, and this is just west of Rozdone. If the Russians reach all the way to this point, take the crossing, there is no way for the Ukrainian forces to retreat. It will be an operational encirclement unless the Ukrainians redraw out to the west of Velyka Novosilka. So this is the why this matters like this. Actually, I should have moved this like this, here, so you probably can see better. Yeah, you can see how this plays out, and this Russian push, this one over here, this push over here mapped by the Ukrainian mapping is the key. So this is a situation over at Rozdone. Very, very dynamic situation. Very, very scary if you are the defending forces around here. So anyway, that's the situation over in the Velyka Novosilka sector. Over on the western part of the Uspenivka sector, situation is also quite bad. As I mentioned before, this is the prime target, Constantinople, as this will dictate operational encirclement or not across the entire front line in Kurakove and Uspenivka. Constantinople is their strategic town. So that is freaking dangerous for the Ukrainians to lose this town. And the Russians are indeed pushing up again. So other than shelling reported at Ulakli, which is not very important in our current situation, Russian forces are now pushing towards Rozliv. Fighting is reported. This arrow is ugly. So this is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry over the past 24 hours. And there is already Ukrainian mapping confirming the Russians have expanded control west of Maximivka. And this signifies the continued push towards Rozliv and Zelenivka, and potentially towards Constantinople. So, and the Russian forces are fighting in the region of Maximivka towards Sukiali. Fighting is reported at Konstantinopolske. Expansion of control around Trudove, moving towards Uspenivka is also reported. I will move there and talk about it now. So that's the current situation on the western half of the Uspenivka front. As we move towards the eastern half, and I'm going to move the arrows so that we can continue like this. Yeah, and Russian forces are also pushing this area. As I mentioned before, this is like a toothpaste, and they're squeezing the Ukrainians outwards, out of Uspenivka, from the east of Uspenivka. So Russian forces are now already fighting towards Romanivka. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, over the past 24 hours, they have reported the Russians are attacking this way. Mapping by the Russian side have claimed that they have straightened the front line, which does make sense because the Ukrainians mentioned about the fighting at Romanivka. Geolocation of Russian forces confirming the Russians have reached the north of Ilinka, and they have fully secured the north of Antonivka.
Fighting somehow is still being reported at Antonivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and there is fighting reported at Katerinivka the day before, but it was not mentioned on the 22nd, which means that Katerinivka might have fallen, and the Ukrainian forces are still holding defense around Antonivka, which is crazy that they are still trying to hold the position around here, while they are now in danger of encirclement or having the retreat route totally cut off, as the Russians are now pushing towards Romanivka. Fighting is reported at Yelizavetivka. This is even worse because they are on the southern half of the river. They have to go through Zeleny High towards Hanivka to retreat. And the Russians have already expanded control around Trudove, as they are fighting at Trudove. Towards Uspenivka, Konstantinopolsky, and expanded their control south of Zeleny High, as the Russians are now pushing towards Zeleny High. And this is the crossing. This is the crossing the Ukrainians needed for the people at Yelizavetivka and Zeleny High to retreat up to the northern half of the river. And if the Russians reach there, they'll be doomed. If the Russians cut off this, and then we will have a encirclement around here. So the entire situation here is just horrible. It's not just shit hit the fan, it's shit hit the aircon. When the shit hit the aircon, you can just throw away the entire aircon, because you would never ever use it again. Every time you on it, you just smell like shit. And you clearly know, you can still wipe a fan, but you can't wipe the aircon. How do you wipe the aircon full of shit? So that is the aircon now. This is the Uspenivka brand aircon. So terrible situation. I think it's without a doubt this front line is going to fall. We're talking about a pretty huge front line. Can I actually draw a... Yeah, this area here, how big is this? Actually, I can't tell. Where? Oh, it's the entire area here is 66.7 square kilometers. 65.7 square kilometers. This is a massive amount. This is just an estimate. 65.7 square kilometers of ground already forfeited. This situation, this is forfeited. There's no way the Ukrainians can hold this position. So it is what it is. Definitely depressing times for the Ukrainians. Over at the Kurakove sector, in the southern half, the Russian forces have shelled Dashne. They are fighting in the region of Kurakove as they continue to expand control, putting pressure closer and closer to this Ukrainian stronghold. This is a fortress. This is a previous operational HQ. I don't believe it's operating as a HQ anymore, because the front line has already arrived here. Russians are pushing Beresky. Airstrike was geolocated within Kurakove. Dalny has fallen. Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture, as the Russians are now pushing out of Dalny right now. So there's still not enough information coming out from this area here, I would say, despite there is already some frontline changes being reported here, but I believe that there's more that we are not seeing at this moment. I think the next intel drop is going to be huge around this area as well. I don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to hold this position. And so this is one encirclement after another encirclement. As I mentioned, this itself, so let me draw. This itself is one. Then there's another one. Then as a bigger one. And then you have yet a bigger one around here. And then as a massive one around Konstantinopolsky. You can see, the envelopments around envelopments. It's like encirclement, pincer after pincer after pincer. And then there's another one, bigger one. There's another one around here, and then a bigger one. So this is the kind of situation that the Ukrainian forces, the commanders have to face right now. The decision making right now is going to be critical, and I don't think that it is practical to think about counterattacks and to relieve the situation. I think the key point right now for the Ukrainians is to think of what is the best way to tactically retreat and where to form the next line of defense that they can defend better. This forfeited. This entire area is just looking really bad right now. So yeah, we go to the northern flank of the Kurakove sector. As mentioned, the shelling at Ulakli and Dashny. Russian forces are fighting at Sonsivka, Zoria, and Beresky. This is the current situation in the north. As mentioned, Sonsivka towards Staritani will be one hell of a terrible situation. And not to mention, As I mentioned about Constantinople, the Russians could potentially also push west and attack into Andriivka. Similarly, it will just be just as bad. It will just be just as bad. So the situation is quite bad in this area. In the Selidove region, as mentioned, there is fighting at Novodimitrivka, but it's nobody cares about it anymore because the front line has moved so far. So at Selidove region, fighting is reported over in Krakowivka, Petrivka, Pushtinka, Yurievka, Novo Alexievka, and towards Pushkine. There are some frontline changes around Pushtinka as well as around the northwest of Selidove. And then there is fighting reported in the north of Selidove. So generally, this is the current situation. Not much changes, but the Russians are definitely still going to move along the railway line, and they are seemingly trying to push in this general direction westward. I think the aim is probably the highway around here. There is this highway leading up from Pokrov all the way down to Constantinople, which is why I say this is and Andriivka. As I said, this is a pretty important hub, and it leads all the way with a highway all the way to Pokrovsk. So, which is like that's why the strategically it's important. Over in the Pokrov sector, fighting is reported at Lyubivka, Prodivka, Promin, towards Minograd, Sukiya, Lisivka, Dashansky, and Ukrainian have some capture around the MKK region, with geolocation confirming Ukrainian capture. There's some horrible arrows like this. Okay, so that's the current situation. This front line, as I mentioned, almost on every video, is just a static line. This is the Ukrainians wants to hold the line, while the Russians also wants to hold the line. No one is going to push very hard over here, but definitely heavy skirmishes, because this is the Ukrainians have a major settlement around here, and this is strategically super important. Pokrov, so Minograd protects Pokrov as well. So this is going to be very heavy fighting, despite the lines are not going to change much. If the Ukrainians have the opportunity to counterattack and recapture Khorodivka, they would, but unlikely that they're going to succeed due to the lack of resources and equipment and manpower and trained troops to do it. Tentatively, it is what it is. What they have is mostly very cannon fodder-ish kind of troops, where they can hold ground for as long as they could, potentially until they are all attrition out. But that is the extent for now. Unfortunately, that seems to be the sad reality. Over the New York front, shelling is reported over at Stara Mykolaiivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Why is it Stara Mykolaiivka? I can't. Prodovka. Sorry, because Stara Mykolaiivka is also known as Prodovka, and Prodovka was mentioned in the Russian Defense Ministry report. Otherwise, the fighting generally is over in the Torex region, and particularly heavily over in the Zabalka region. The Ukrainian mapping finally acknowledged Russian advance, and they have mapped that the Russians have captured, have moved into Zabalka in this way. And as such, Russian mapping also acknowledged that the Russians have entered in this direction, in the east to west direction. So the Ukrainian claims will return. So this is a Ukrainian claim. However, Russian forces are geolocated on the western part of Zabalka as well. Ukrainian forces counterattack over at Nelipivka. Russians are attacking at Lyudivka towards Skibinivka, and there is frontline change over at Toretsk as the Russians continue to put pressure in Toretsk. So I want to zoom in into this area here over at the Zabalka, so we can see the situation here, how it looks like right now. So you can see the current established mapping, firm mapping will look something like this, according to the Ukrainians, and it looks something like this. So however, geolocation does confirm that the Russians have more of that. This area here in the south previously was under, based on the judgment call that I've made, I believe that the Russians come from the south. So tentatively, it will be in the gray zone, as the Ukrainians claim that this area here is still under Ukrainian control, and they have like a double salient situation where the Russians just push into
the Ukrainian lines. So we shall see how this play out, and whether we have more geolocations in the south to confirm what is the situation in the south of Zabalka. So it could be Ukrainian, it could be Russian. So let's see how this continue to play out. And meanwhile, press the subscribe button if you watch to this point. I think it's only fair that you support the channel. So it is what it is. And press the like button. And over at the thorax, the Ukrainian mapping have mapped that the Russians have expanded control around here. But if you notice that these lines is really weird, like it's a diagonal line across buildings and roads. Like this line don't make sense, right? So which means that this is just a estimate from the Ukrainian mapping. This is by Deep State UA, which means that the Russian control is definitely bigger than this. It's just that they do not want to acknowledge it yet. So my guess is that the Russian Russian control is actually much bigger, maybe up to this point. So anyway, we shall continue to monitor the situation over in the thorax region of the New York front. Over at the Bakhmut front, in the south of Bakhmut, the major geolocation, this geolocation on the west of Andriivka, confirming Russians have indeed taken grounds all towards the canal around this west of Andriivka in the south Bakhmut region. So this is a massive geolocation, and so we cannot confirm this will also means that all of the north is fully captured as well, but tentatively this is how I map this on the judgment call that Andriivka is now fully under Russian control. So otherwise we move further up north. We have fighting reported in the central region. There's fighting reported in Mariupol. Maybe this is just shelling by the Russian Defense Ministry reporting. So let's take it as a shelling by Mariupol. Fighting is reported at Chasivya, shelling as Shovone, and fighting is reported as Tuposhki. Otherwise, don't believe too much into this. There will be some kind of Chasiv offensive. I'm quite sure that you have already been told by other people that Chasiv offensive, Chasivya offensive for 1 year already. And for 1 year already, I already said that no, the Russians won't push here. So no. Yeah, so now you know who to believe. So at the Sivers front, fighting is reported at Sivers. It could be shelling, but that's about it. Nothing particularly special. Geolocation of a missile strike at Ozerne, not important per se, the Ozerne. And then we go into the Kremlin front. At the Kremlin front, fighting is reported in the Serbiansky Forestry, Torske, Terni, and shelling is reported at Krasny Liman or Crispy Lemon or Lemon. So I mean, Crispy Lemon is my term. No, this is not the real name. Just in case, some of you are very slow. And geolocation of Russian forces attack into Terni. This is yet another slow crawl, another 500-600 meters captured. Geolocation of Russian airstrike opposite shore of the river. That just shows how intense the fighting around this area here. As the Russian assault troops move on, they are supported by air support. So that's the current situation. And moving into the Svidovay front, there is fighting reported over in Makiivka, Kharkivka, Novoyarivka, Svetoklibove. So that's all from this area. I realize that I shouldn't speak too fast. Especially I want to say the names, because the Russians don't speak this fast, which is why they can pronounce better, the names. Over at Borova, this Borova sector, Russian forces expanded control around Peshotravneve. Fighting is reported at Kopanki as Russian forces advance in that area. Fighting generally over the past 24 hours is reported towards Zeleny High. So if I zoom in into Kopanki, you can see the geolocation of Russian forces entering Kopanki for the first time. So this is the current situation over in this Borova sector. And over in the Pischany front, at the Pischany front, Russian forces are fighting in the region of Berestove, Stemakivka, Lozova, Zarizove, Koleniskivka, and Khrushchevka, with some frontline changes over in the Koleniskivka region based on Russian mapping. They also disclaim part of the mapping. So this is just a correction of the mapping per se from the Russian side. So no, not something very, very important per se. So we move over to the north. Over the Kupiansk front, there is only fighting reported at Kupiansk and Petropavlivka, but that's all, nothing particularly special about this. And then we move into the Kharkiv front. And before we go to the Kharkiv front, I just want to note that over the past 2 days also there was the massive strike. The where the Russians use ICBM on Dnipro. I didn't map it in here. I should have. Maybe I'll just do it later. So I already done a video, especially on this, so you can check it out. It's on the main channel. So, and then we go into the Kharkiv front. There is shelling reported over at Lebedivka, a bit weird. Over that is out of place. Fighting is reported at Voschansk, Starisya, Klipoke, as well as Kozacha Lopan. So that's all. The very skirmishy. I don't think there's something big that's happening around in the Kharkiv front. We move off towards the Kursk front. At the Kursk front, the Russian forces continue their offensive, and this time around the fighting is primarily around this sector. Only this sector is being reported where the Russians are pushing, and fighting is reported at Malaya Loknia. This is what is this? Viktorovka, Nikorsky, Andria, Novo Ivanovka, Leonidovo, Lebedevka, Svetiklovo, Darino. Frontline changes at Darino with the Russian forces geolocated to have entered into the south of Darino. And you can see that with this fighting, you can see that the front line might actually look something like this. The front line may actually look something like this. So it may not be what we are seeing over in our mapping right here, because the mapping can be slower than reality, but based on the reporting, the front line may actually be more advanced and the Russians may have captured more grounds than what we have understood previously. So anyway, this is the situation in the Kursk front, and that's about it, or Kursk front. So anyway, thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, and have a great weekend. I'll see you guys in the next update.